The ship called USS Horizon drifted slowly through the darkness of space. Captain Allison Wright stood by the main window, her eyes fixed on the blue-green planet growing larger as they approached. After 3 years of deep space travel, they had finally reached the Epsilon 9 system. This planet, the third from its sun, showed signs of life. Real life. Not just microbes or simple plants, but complex ecosystems. "Scans complete, Captain," said Science Officer Eric Bennett. His voice was calm as always, but Allison caught the slight tremor of excitement. "Atmosphere is breathable. Oxygen levels slightly higher than Earth. Temperature ranges within human tolerance." "Life signs?" Allison asked, though she already knew the answer. "Abundant," Eric replied, his eyes not leaving his screen. "More diverse than anything we've seen before. And," he paused, adjusting something on his console, "there are some very unusual energy readings I can't explain." Communications specialist. Melissa Garcia looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting no artificial signals. If there's intelligent life, they're not broadcasting." Allison nodded. This was expected. True first contact was the dream of every explorer, but finding uninhabited life-bearing worlds was still rare enough to be precious. "Prepare a landing party," she ordered. "Tell Dr. Kelly to select his team. I want boots on the ground within 3 hours." Dr. Nathan Kelly could barely contain his excitement as the shuttle descended through wispy clouds. As the lead xenobiologist on the horizon, he had waited his entire career for a moment like this. Beside him sat Security Chief Jack Peters, a former Marine whose hand never strayed far from his weapon. "Remember," Jack reminded everyone, "we observe only. No one wanders off alone, no matter how interesting something looks." The shuttle landed in a small clearing surrounded by towering purple-tinged vegetation that resembled trees but grew in spiraling patterns. The air that rushed in when the door opened smelled sweet and slightly metallic. Nathan stepped out first, the soft ground sinking slightly beneath his boots. He activated his recorder and spoke clearly. "First human footsteps on Epsilon 9. Third, planet. The ground feels spongier than Earth soil, likely due to different microbial composition." The rest of the team followed, spreading out in a careful formation. Melissa Garcia, who served as both communications specialist and linguist on this mission, set up monitoring equipment to capture any sounds in the environment. "Listen," she said after a moment. "Notice anything strange?" The team fell silent. The forest around them was alive with noises, chirps, rustles, distant calls, but they came in waves, with moments of complete silence in between. "Almost like something is passing through," Nathan observed, "causing everything to go quiet as it moves." They ventured deeper into the forest, cataloging plants and small, scurrying creatures that resembled earth mammals, but had 6 limbs instead of 4. Most fled at the sight of humans. 2 hours into their exploration, Jack's motion sensor beeped softly. "Movement large signature about 200 meters north, moving parallel to us." "Predator?" Nathan asked, excitement and fear mingling in his voice. "Likely. Size suggests apex predator." Nathan wanted to investigate, but Jack insisted they proceed with caution. They altered course slightly, moving toward where the reading had appeared. The forest changed as they walked, the vegetation becoming sparser, with clear signs of large animals passing through, broken branches, disturbed soil, and strange markings on tree trunks that looked almost deliberate. Melissa pointed to a nearby tree. "Look at these claw marks. Whatever made them must be huge." Nathan scanned the marks with his device. "Based on depth and spacing, we're looking at a creature weighing at least 800 pounds, with claws sharper than any Earth predator." The motion sensor beeped again, this time closer. Jack raised his hand, signaling for silence. "It's circling us, keeping distance but definitely tracking our movement." Nathan felt his heart race. This behavior was fascinating, a classic predator pattern. Yet strange too, as the creature maintained an exact distance, never coming closer than 100 meters. "I'm going to try something," Nathan said, taking a small drone from his pack. "Let's get a look at our admirer." The drone rose silently into the air, its camera feeding back to Nathan's handheld screen. He guided it in the direction of the readings. For several minutes, the drone showed only forest. Then suddenly, the image shook violently before going dark. "Lost the signal," Nathan said, looking up with wide eyes. "Something took it down." Jack's sensor beeped rapidly. "Movement, it's—" He stopped, looking confused. "It's retreating, fast." "What? Why?" Nathan was bewildered. If this was indeed an apex predator, why would it flee? Eric Bennett, who had been quietly taking samples nearby, called out, "Over here! Everyone needs to see this." The team gathered around a small clearing where Eric stood. Before them lay the remains of a massive creature, not their stalker, but clearly another large predator. Its body was torn apart with surgical precision, organs removed and placed in a neat line beside the carcass. "This isn't natural predation," Eric said softly. "This is something else. Analysis or ritual, perhaps." Nathan knelt beside the remains, careful not to touch anything. "Intelligence. We're possibly dealing with a sentient apex predator." Just then, all the small sounds of the forest ceased at once. The silence was absolute and chilling. Jack's sensor remained quiet, but he drew his weapon anyway. "We need to return to the shuttle now." They moved quickly through the forest, the silence following them. Nathan felt eyes watching from every shadow, though the sensors detected nothing close. As they reached the clearing where their shuttle waited, Nathan turned for one last look at the forest. For a brief moment, he thought he saw something, a shimmer of movement against the purple foliage, too large to be anything but their stalker. But it made no move to approach, staying at the forest edge. Once inside the shuttle, Nathan reviewed their collected data as they ascended back to the horizon. "Whatever that creature was, it was studying us as much as we were studying it," he told the others. "And for some reason, it won't come near humans. Didn't you notice? It maintained exactly the same distance throughout our encounter." "Captain." Wright listened to their report with growing interest as the team showed her their findings in the ship's lab. "So the deadliest predator on this planet refuses to approach humans," she summarized. "The question is, why? Fear, caution, something else entirely?" Nathan smiled as he prepared samples for analysis. "That, Captain, is exactly what we're going to find out." On the planet below, a massive shape moved through the darkening forest. Its 6 eyes tracked the light of the departing shuttle until it disappeared into the clouds. The creature's highly evolved brain processed what it had witnessed. Strange. Beings with an even stranger scent. A scent that triggered ancient memories passed down through countless generations. A warning from ancestors long dead. Do not approach. Do not engage. Observe only. The hunt would continue another day. For now, the creature would watch and learn about these humans who carried the scent of the only thing its kind had ever feared. 3 weeks had passed since the USS Horizon's first landing on the planet. The research outpost was now fully established in a small valley surrounded by the dense purple forest. Prefabricated buildings formed a circle around a central area, where researchers worked at all hours, studying samples and analyzing data. A tall fence surrounded the outpost, though so far it seemed unnecessary. Dr. Nathan Kelly had not slept well since their first encounter with what the team now called the Shadow Stalker. Every night, motion sensors at the perimeter would detect large shapes moving just beyond the tree line, always maintaining that same 100-meter distance, never approaching, but never leaving either. "They're watching us," Nathan told Samantha Lee as they reviewed footage from the night before. Samantha was the team's expert on predator behavior, brought down from the horizon specifically to study the shadow stalkers. "Not just watching," Samantha corrected, pointing to the screen. "Look at their movement patterns. They're testing the perimeter, looking for weaknesses, trying to understand our routines." The grainy night vision footage showed large shadows, moving with surprising grace for creatures so big. Their exact shape remained elusive. The shadow stalkers seemed to blend with their surroundings, making clear images impossible. "Intelligence far beyond Earth predators," Nathan murmured. Yet they won't come close enough for us to study properly. Samantha nodded. We need better footage. The drone method failed, but I have another idea. Later that day, Nathan joined Samantha and Lisa Martinez, their drone operator at the edge of the outpost. Lisa had modified several small drones with enhanced camouflage and silent running capabilities. These should get much closer before being detected, Lisa explained, launching the first drone. I've programmed them to maintain maximum distance from any large moving objects. The three researchers watched the drone's feed on a portable screen as it flew deep into the forest. Unlike the first attempt weeks ago, this drone moved slowly, pausing often to blend with its surroundings. 20 minutes in, Lisa tensed. Movement at 2 o'clock, large signature. The drone hovered behind thick foliage as something massive moved through the forest floor below. Through gaps in the leaves, they caught glimpses of dark, mottled skin that seemed to shift colors slightly as it moved. It's adapting its camouflage, Nathan whispered, though there was no need to be quiet. Like an octopus or chameleon, but more advanced. Lisa carefully positioned the drone for a better view. For a brief moment, they got a clear shot of the creature. Freeze that, Samantha ordered. The image on screen showed a quadruped with powerful limbs and a low-slung body. Its head was broad with 6 eyes positioned for maximum visibility. 2, facing forward and 4 arranged around the sides of its skull. Most striking were the sensory organs that protruded from its head like antennae, constantly moving and sampling the air. Estimated weight, 800 pounds, Lisa read from the drone's analysis. Body temperature suggests warm-blooded. Those eyes likely have infrared capability based on their structure. Nathan stared at the image, mesmerized. We're looking at the perfect predator, yet it's afraid of us. Why? The answer came 3 days later from an unexpected source. Dr. Paul Wilson, the team's medical doctor, had been analyzing human biological samples compared to the local life forms. It's not fear, Paul explained to Nathan and Kevin Turner, a young security officer who had joined them. At least, not fear of us physically. It's something in our chemistry. Paul pulled up a molecular diagram on his screen. This compound is present in human sweat. Minimal concentration, but definitely there. Now look at this. He showed them another diagram, similar but not identical. This compound was found in soil samples near what we believe are ancient ruins on the northern continent. Specifically, near remains that might be from another apex predator species. Nathan's eyes widened as he made the connection. You're saying these shadow stalkers smell something in our sweat that reminds them of another predator? A competitor? Or possibly their only natural predator, Paul suggested. A species that appears to be extinct now but might have once hunted them. Kevin leaned forward. So they're not afraid of us. They're afraid of what they think we are. This theory needed testing. The team set up a series of experiments at increasing distances from the outpost. They placed cameras and sensors around meat bait, then added different human scents to some sites but not others. The results were clear. Shadow stalkers would not approach any bait with human scent, even hours after humans had left the area. But they would take unmarked bait almost immediately. It's like they have a programmed response, Samantha said during their evening meeting. Almost as if this knowledge is genetic, passed down through generations. That night, the outpost's alarm blared at 2 a.m. Nathan rushed from his quarters to find people running toward the eastern perimeter. When he arrived, he found Kevin and 2 other security officers staring at a section of damaged fence. Something tried to get in, Kevin explained, pointing to the bent metal. First time they've ever come this close. Dr. Wilson arrived, looking troubled. We had placed biological samples in the lab on this side of the compound. The storage unit malfunctioned about an hour ago, stopped cooling. The samples would have released their scent as they warmed. And the shadow stalker smelled them, Nathan finished. But not human scent, just local animal samples. The breach changed everything. Captain Wright authorized a more aggressive research approach, and within days the team had set up a new testing area 5 miles from the main outpost. Here they built a simple structure with one section containing concentrated human sweat, compounds, and another without. The team watched via remote cameras as a shadow stalker approached the structure after dark. It circled the building repeatedly, never going near the side with human scent. When Kevin released a small amount of synthetic, human compound via remote, the creature retreated instantly, moving faster than they had ever seen it move. "This confirms it," Nathan told Captain Wright during their weekly report. "These creatures associate some chemical in human sweat with danger. Mortal danger. Can we use this?" Wright asked. "For protection or even communication?" Nathan nodded, slowly. "We might be able to create a chemical barrier they won't cross, a fence that's more effective than any physical barrier." "And communication?" the captain pressed. "That's trickier," Nathan admitted, "but if we could isolate exactly what compound triggers them and create variations, we might establish a crude chemical language." As the meeting ended, Nathan returned to the observation post, where Samantha was monitoring the forest edge. In the 3 weeks since their arrival, the vegetation had already changed noticeably. With the shadow stalkers keeping their distance, smaller predators had moved closer to the outpost, and their prey followed. "We're changing the ecosystem just by being here," Samantha said quietly. "The scent that protects us is already creating ripples through the entire food chain." In the gathering darkness, multiple sets of eyes watched from the forest edge. The shadow stalkers were learning, adapting, and somewhere in their ancient genetic memory, a warning passed down through countless generations was being re-evaluated. Against new evidence, the deadliest predator on the planet wouldn't approach a human, not yet. But things were changing. 6 months had passed since the first landing on the planet. The research outpost had grown into a small settlement with more permanent structures. The main laboratory now occupied the largest building in the center of the compound, where Dr. Nathan Kelly spent most of his waking hours. Nathan stared at the complex chemical formulas on his screen. Dark circles under his eyes showed his lack of sleep. His obsession with understanding the shadow stalkers had only grown stronger over time. "You need to rest," said Amanda Perez, the chief engineer who had come to drop off new equipment. "You've been at this for 20 hours straight." Nathan rubbed his eyes. "I'm close to something important. I can feel it." The door opened and Dr. Daniel Harris entered, his face showing unusual excitement. Daniel was a biochemist who normally maintained a calm, almost emotionless demeanor. "I found it," Daniel announced, placing a tablet on the desk. "The exact compound in human sweat that triggers the shadow stalker response." Nathan and Amanda leaned forward to look at the molecular structure displayed on the screen. "It's so simple," Nathan said, surprise evident in his voice. "Just a basic pheromone chain, but with this unusual sulfur bond." Daniel nodded. "Simple, but unique. And here's the important part. I compared it with the compounds we found in those ruins on the northern continent." He swiped to show another structure. "They're not just similar, they're nearly identical. The extinct species produced a version of this same compound, but much stronger." Amanda looked between the two scientists. "So these shadow stalkers are genetically programmed to avoid anything that smells even remotely like their ancient enemy?" "Exactly," Daniel confirmed. "And there's more. Based on the fossil records we've found, this extinct species was smaller than humans but had similar biochemistry. They might have hunted in groups to take down shadow stalkers." Nathan stood up and paced the room. "This changes everything. We're not just visitors here. We're unwittingly triggering ancient survival instincts. To the shadow stalkers, we smell like their only natural predator." Later that day, Nathan presented their findings to Captain Wright and Ryan Thompson, the newly appointed colony administrator who had arrived with the latest supply ship. "Fascinating discovery," Ryan said when Nathan finished his explanation. "But I'm more interested in practical applications. Can we use this compound to secure the new settlement areas?" Captain Wright frowned slightly. "I thought this was primarily a research mission, not a colonization effort." Ryan smiled thinly. "Exploration naturally leads to expansion, Captain. The Horizon's mission parameters were updated by Earth Command last month. We're now authorized to establish permanent human presence here." Nathan looked between them, sensing tension. "To answer your question, Administrator Thompson, yes, We could synthesize this compound to create chemical barriers the shadow stalkers won't cross. But there are ecological concerns. Excellent, Ryan interrupted. I want production to begin immediately. We need to secure at least 5 square miles for the first settlement phase. After Ryan left, Captain Wright stayed behind. I don't like this change in mission, Dr. Kelly. We know too little about this planet's ecosystems to start claiming territory. Nathan nodded in agreement. The shadow stalkers are apex predators. Pushing them away from large areas could have unpredictable effects on the entire food chain. Despite their concerns, the production of the synthetic compound began. Within weeks, settlement boundaries were marked with dispersion posts that released minute amounts of the chemical into the air, creating an invisible barrier no shadow stalker would cross. The settlement grew quickly. New buildings rose, land was cleared for agriculture, and more personnel arrived from the horizon and 2 additional Earthships that entered orbit. By the 4th month, nearly 500 humans lived on the surface. Nathan found himself increasingly sidelined. Administrator Thompson preferred to work with scientists who supported his expansion plans. Only a small team still focused on studying the shadow stalkers rather than repelling them. One evening, Samantha Lee rushed into Nathan's lab, her face flushed with urgency. You need to see this, she said, uploading footage to the main screen. We captured it at Observation Post 3, about 15 miles from the settlement edge. The video showed a group of 3 shadow stalkers moving together through the forest, clearly coordinating their movements as they surrounded a large herbivore. Their attack was precisely synchronized, bringing down prey much larger than any single shadow stalker could handle alone. Pack hunting, Nathan whispered. We've never seen this behavior before. Samantha nodded grimly. It started about 2 weeks ago, and there's more. She showed another clip, this one from the settlement boundary. A shadow stalker approached the chemical barrier but stopped before reaching it. Instead of retreating, it picked up a large branch in its powerful jaws and threw it across the barrier line, triggering a sensor alarm. They're testing our defenses, Nathan said, learning about them. This isn't just instinctive behavior anymore, this is problem solving. The next morning, Nathan and Samantha presented their findings to Captain Wright and Administrator Thompson in the main conference room. So they're hunting in packs now, Ryan said dismissively. Many Earth predators do the same. I don't see the concern. The concern, Samantha explained patiently, is that they're adapting their behavior in response to our presence, and they're showing signs of tool use. Daniel Harris, who had also been invited to the meeting, added, There's something else you should know. The latest tissue samples show slight variations in the shadow stalker's sensory organs. They may be evolving resistance to our chemical compound. Ryan scoffed. Evolution takes thousands of years. Normally, yes, Daniel agreed. But in high-pressure situations with strong selection pressure, changes can appear much faster, especially with creatures that appear to have highly adaptable genetics. Captain Wright looked troubled. Are you suggesting these creatures could eventually overcome their aversion to humans? It's possible, Nathan confirmed. Not immediately, but sooner than we might think. And there's another problem. He displayed a series of ecosystem charts on the main screen. With shadow stalkers pushed away from large areas, the prey species have overpopulated. They're destroying vegetation faster than it can regrow. We're seeing the beginning of ecological collapse in regions near our settlements. Ryan stood up, his patience clearly at an end. This is a human colony, not a nature preserve. We have over 500 people to protect now, with more arriving next month. Your concerns are noted, Dr. Kelly, but our security protocols will continue as planned. As the meeting ended, Captain Wright pulled Nathan aside. Keep monitoring the situation. If things get worse, I'll support you in requesting a mission review from Earth Command. Nathan nodded, but both knew that any response from Earth would take months to arrive. That night, as Nathan worked late in his lab, the settlement, alarms blared. For the first time since the chemical barriers were installed, a shadow stalker had crossed the line. 1 year had passed since humans first set foot on the planet. The settlement had grown into a proper colony with over 1,000 people. Large sections of forest had been cleared for farming and new buildings. A tall wall now surrounded the main colony, with chemical dispensers placed every 50 feet along its length. Nathan Kelly stood at the edge of the eastern farm fields, looking out at the changed landscape. Where once purple trees had grown in spiral patterns, now rows of earth crops stretched toward the horizon. The beauty of the alien forest had been replaced by the familiar order of human agriculture. "Quite a view, isn't it?" said Hunter Clark, stepping up beside him. Hunter commanded the colony's security forces, a role that had grown increasingly important in recent months. "Not the view I hoped to see when we first landed," Nathan replied honestly. Hunter shrugged. "Progress requires change, Doctor. And speaking of change, Administrator Thompson wants you at the Emergency Council meeting. Another incident occurred last night." The council room was filled with tense faces when Nathan arrived. Administrator Ryan Thompson sat at the head of the table, with Captain Wright beside him. Though the horizon remained in orbit, Allison spent most of her time on the surface now, trying to balance the scientific mission with colonial expansion. 3 chemical barriers were breached last night, Ryan announced as soon as everyone was seated. 2 at the northern perimeter and 1 near the western agricultural zone. 1 worker was injured before security arrived. "How badly?" asked Dr. Samantha Lee. She had become an advocate for studying shadowstalker behavior rather than simply repelling them. "Minor injuries," Hunter replied. "But it could have been worse. The shadowstalker retreated when our patrol arrived with sound cannons." Nathan leaned forward. "This is the 5th breach this month. The chemical deterrent is clearly becoming less effective. Which is why we've developed a stronger version," said a new voice. Olivia Daniels, the colony's ecologist, entered the room, carrying a tablet. She had once been concerned about environmental impacts but had gradually aligned herself with Thompson's expansion goals. "The new compound is 10 times more concentrated," Olivia explained. "Early tests show even the most resistant shadowstalkers won't cross it." "And what about the ecological impact?" Nathan asked. "The prey species are already destroying vegetation faster than it can grow back. The small lakes in Sector 7 have turned toxic due to algae blooms caused by runoff from overgrazed areas." Ryan waved his hand dismissively. "We've designated conservation zones where no human activity is permitted. That should maintain sufficient ecological balance." "Those zones are too small," Samantha objected, "and they're not connected, which prevents normal migration patterns." "The colony's safety comes first," Ryan said firmly. "Hunter, deploy the new compound along all perimeters immediately, and double the security patrols." As the meeting ended, Captain Wright pulled Nathan and Samantha aside. "I've sent another report to Earth Command about the ecological concerns, but you know how long it takes to get a response." "We don't have that kind of time," Nathan said. "The ecosystem is already showing signs of collapse, and there's something else you should know." He showed Wright some images on his tablet. "We've observed over 20 instances of shadowstalkers using objects as tools in the past 2 weeks. Branches to test perimeter alarms, rocks to damage sensor equipment, even digging trenches to redirect water away from our irrigation channels." Wright looked troubled. "That suggests higher intelligence than we initially thought." "They're adapting," Samantha added, "learning our patterns and developing countermeasures." 3 days later, the new chemical compound was deployed around the entire colony perimeter. For a week, no breaches occurred. Administrator Thompson declared the problem solved and approved plans for further expansion, adding another square mile to the colony's territory. Nathan and his small research team continued their work, though with limited resources. They had established a blind 6 miles from the colony where they could observe shadowstalker behavior without interference from the chemical barriers. "Look at this," Samantha said one evening, showing Nathan footage from that day. "They're sharing food." The video showed a group of 5 shadowstalkers. One had made a kill, but instead of guarding it from the others, it was allowing them to feed as well. "Social behavior is becoming more complex," Nathan noted. "They're not just hunting in packs now, they're forming stable social groups. And Look at this one. Samantha pointed to a smaller shadow stalker at the edge of the group. It appears younger, possibly born after we arrived on the planet. It shows much less aversion to our camera equipment than the older ones. Nathan watched thoughtfully. The new generation is adapting. The question is, how quickly? They got their answer a week later when alarms blared throughout the colony at midnight. Nathan rushed to the command center where Hunter was coordinating. The response: multiple breaches, all sectors, Hunter shouted into his communicator. Full security response, this is not a drill. Nathan stared at the main screen in shock. Red dots showed breach points all around the colony perimeter, at least 20 separate locations where shadow stalkers had crossed the chemical barriers. How? Is this possible? Ryan demanded as he burst into the room. The new compound was supposed to be completely effective. They're coming in groups, Hunter explained tensely. 2 or 3 create a distraction at one point while others cross elsewhere. It's coordinated. The attacks continued through the night. Though no colonists were killed, several were injured, and considerable damage was done to outlying structures and equipment. By dawn, the shadow stalkers had retreated, but the colony was badly shaken. An emergency council was called as soon as the sun rose. The usual arguments between expansion and conservation were replaced by a single focus: survival. We need to strike back, Hunter insisted. Find their dens, their breeding grounds. Show them that attacking us has consequences. That would only escalate the conflict, Nathan argued. They're intelligent enough to understand retaliation. It could trigger an all-out war we might not win. Ryan looked less confident than usual. What do you suggest, Dr. Kelly? Because clearly our current approach isn't working. Coexistence, Nathan said simply. We need to stop expanding, establish clear boundaries, and find ways to share this planet rather than trying to dominate it. Grace Powell, who had arrived on the last supply ship as Ryan's assistant, spoke up for the first time. Perhaps Dr. Kelly is right. On Earth, conservation efforts have shown that predators and humans can coexist if proper corridors and territories are established. Ridiculous, Ryan snapped. These aren't Earth predators, they're alien creatures that are actively coordinating attacks against us. Because we've pushed them out of their territories and disrupted their food sources, Samantha pointed out. We're a threat to their survival. The debate continued without resolution until Captain Wright finally stood up. Enough. I'm implementing emergency protocols under my authority as mission commander. All expansion stops immediately. Dr. Kelly and Engineer Rodriguez will work together to develop a coexistence strategy rather than a domination approach. Ryan started to object, but Wright cut him off. This is not a vote, Administrator. The mission has become too dangerous to continue as we have been. We either find a way to live alongside these creatures, or we may have to abandon this planet entirely. As the council dispersed, Nathan knew their greatest challenge was just beginning. Finding balance would not be easy, but the alternative was a conflict that humans might not survive. 2 years had passed since humans first arrived on the planet. The colony looked very different now. Instead of expanding outward in all directions, human structures were concentrated in 3 main areas connected by narrow, protected corridors. Between these areas, the native forest had been allowed to regrow, creating green belts that crisscrossed the colony. Nathan Kelly stood on the observation platform of the main research tower, watching activity in both human and wild spaces through his binoculars. In one direction, colonists worked in compact, efficient farm plots. In the other, a herd of 6-legged herbivores grazed peacefully at the forest edge. Quite a change from last year, said Grace Powell, who had replaced Ryan Thompson as colony administrator 3 months ago. Thompson had been recalled to Earth after the failure of his aggressive expansion policies. The coexistence approach is working better than even I expected, Nathan admitted, though we still have challenges. As if to emphasize his point, an alarm chimed softly from the monitoring station. The alert wasn't the blaring emergency siren of the past, but a simple notification. One of the shadow stalkers had entered a designated shared zone, where both humans and native wildlife were permitted. Frank Rodriguez, the adaptive systems engineer who had worked closely with Nathan to redesign the colony, checked the monitor. It's coming along the eastern corridor, right on schedule. This was part of the new system. Instead of trying to keep shadow stalkers away completely, certain paths through the colony were designated as travel corridors that the predators could use at specific times. No humans would be in these areas during those periods. The corridor. Sensors are working perfectly, Frank noted with pride. We can track its movement through the entire path. The new approach had not come easily. After the coordinated attacks last year, many colonists had demanded more aggressive measures against the shadow stalkers. Some even called for hunting them to extinction near human settlements. It had taken all of Captain Wright's authority to maintain order while Nathan and his team developed alternatives. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Dr. Samantha Lee had been studying shadow stalker breeding patterns and made a remarkable discovery. They're selective breeders, she had explained to the Colony Council. Not all shadow stalkers reproduce. Only those with certain characteristics are chosen as mates. Further research revealed that shadow stalkers with stronger fear responses to human chemical signatures were preferred as breeding partners. This natural selection was rapidly accelerating the species' adaptation to human presence. We can work with this, Nathan had realized. Instead of fighting their evolution, we can guide it. The new strategy had multiple parts. First, they stopped using the concentrated chemical repellent that had been pushing shadow stalkers to develop resistance. Instead, they returned to using natural human scent, but in a controlled way that created clear boundaries rather than total exclusion. Second, they identified young shadow stalkers that showed strong natural avoidance of human scent and created protected breeding areas for them, while humanely relocating more aggressive individuals to distant territories. Third, and most controversially, they reduced the colony's footprint, giving back large areas to the native ecosystem. The colony became more compact but also more sustainable, with vertical farming and efficient use of space replacing sprawling development. Look there, Grace said now, pointing to the edge of the eastern forest. A large shadow stalker had emerged and was watching the human settlement from a distance. Nathan observed it through his binoculars. That's the one we call Old Scout. She's been monitoring us for months now. She doesn't seem aggressive, Grace noted. No, just curious, and that's exactly what we want. In the main laboratory, Dr. Daniel Harris was showing Captain Wright his latest findings. Wright had chosen to remain on the planet rather than return to Earth with the Horizon, becoming the official Earth government representative to the colony. The DNA analysis confirms it, Daniel explained. Both humans and shadow stalkers are showing subtle genetic changes in just 2 years of interaction. How is that possible? Wright asked. Genetic changes usually take many generations. For major changes, yes, Daniel agreed. But small adaptations can happen more quickly, especially in stress conditions. The shadow stalkers are developing more specialized sensory organs to detect human chemical signatures. And surprisingly, humans are showing increased production of the very compounds that trigger shadow stalker avoidance. We're adapting to each other, Wright said thoughtfully. Exactly. It's a kind of evolutionary dialogue happening in real time. That evening, Nathan joined Samantha at the edge of the colony near one of the wildlife corridors. They sat quietly on a small observation platform, watching as the light faded from the sky. The 6th hunting pack crossed through the northern corridor today, Samantha said, right within their designated time window. They're learning the schedule. And the attacks have stopped completely, Nathan added. 4 months without a single aggressive incident. As darkness fell, they activated night vision on their tablets to continue observing. A group of shadow stalkers moved through the designated corridor about 200 meters away. Unlike the first encounter 2 years ago, these predators didn't maintain an exact distance from the humans. Some came as close as 50 meters before their instincts warned them away. The younger ones come closer, Samantha noted. The fear response is becoming more nuanced. Not gone, but calibrated. Nathan nodded. They're learning we're not the same as their ancient enemy, just similar. Later that night, Nathan wrote in his personal log, 2 years after first contact, we've reached an understanding with the shadow stalkers that goes beyond words. We speak to each other through behavior. Through respect for boundaries, through the subtle chemical language, we both continue to evolve. The deadliest predator alive still won't approach a human directly, but now it's not just fear that keeps them away. It's recognition of difference, of territory, of the need for space between intelligent species. He paused, then added, "The colony has finally accepted that we cannot dominate this world. We can only share it. Our population has stabilized at 1,500 humans, living in harmony with the native ecosystem. Earth Command has approved. Our coexistence protocol is the model for all future colonization efforts." Outside his window, a pair of glowing eyes watched from the forest edge. The Shadowstalker observed the human settlement with intelligence and caution, but no longer with fear alone. Each species had found its place on this shared world. The predator turned and melted back into the forest, following ancient instincts now shaped by new understanding. Humans were not prey, not enemies, not the ancient threat their ancestors had feared, but something new, something to be respected and given space. And so the deadliest predator alive continued to keep its distance from humans, not because it couldn't approach, but because both species had learned something vital. True strength comes not from domination, but from recognizing when to stand apart.